Well, good morning, Gateway family. How's everyone doing this morning? Yeah, look, that's so awesome to have you. I saw you guys rocking out earlier. It was so awesome. Last time I was here was during the 2020 Voices series, as John was mentioning, and that was when lockdown just had happened, right? So when they said, come speak, there's going to be a lot of people here, I was like, great. I walked into that door, and there were literally 2 crickets chirping over there. And so I was like, this is how it's going to be. But it was meant to be the way it was. I wanted to welcome everyone who's joining and streaming online, whether it's Central, Buda, Pflugerville, Dripping Springs, wherever you are. Welcome. It's good to have you here. One of the things that I do when I do speak is I try to incorporate those that are in the organization, their mannerisms and stuff. And so I've noticed, like lately, especially here, right, the mannerisms that like John and Carlos have. Have you ever noticed this? Like John has what I call the Christ pose, like he'll do this a lot, right? Have you ever noticed this? So I'm going to try to incorporate that if I can. If lately, if you've noticed, and the reason I have this table here is the Carlos lean. Have you ever seen this, the Carlos lean? Yeah, you guys know, the reason you're laughing, you know what I'm talking about, right? So I'm going to try to incorporate that today. And if you're south, well, then I have to do the Eric Bryant, which is typically this. But I'm sorry, Eric, I'm sorry. I will catch some flack for that. But today, I'm kind of leading off in our series, Working with All Your Heart. And I think what we try to do is we try to separate who we are as individuals, right? And so I'm going to ask some questions along the way, and I hope that it'll kind of spur you to start thinking about what it is you do in the workplace. So let me start with this. Have you ever had any difficulties with portraying your relationship with God or Jesus to colleagues or coworkers, right? Some of you may be students and maybe have difficulty with fellow classmates. Have you ever thought about like, hey, I see a person struggling. I see somebody struggling right now, and I'm going to pray for them. But you actually don't tell them you're praying for them, or actually even ask them if you could join in that journey. Or better yet, have you ever thought that maybe God and the workplace should be 2 separate things and we shouldn't bring them together? When did work-life balance actually become work-life separation? Like we're taught now these days to compartmentalize everything that we do, especially when it comes to Jesus. It's like we're supposed to clock in and clock out of who we are as an individual when we go through the front doors of our office or we turn on our laptop and start that first Zoom meeting. You ever feel that way? Have you ever thought about all the things that we cannot discuss anymore at work? I mean, the list kind of continues to grow longer and longer, and I thought, hey, since we're in Austin, we should talk about the things that we shouldn't discuss with one another, so I made a list, all right? And I hope you'll join along with me. Let me just tell you this. In my workplace, we say when somebody doesn't stay on task or somebody just like does something different, we go rogue. So I'm probably going to go rogue today a little bit, and hopefully you'll join me. So let's go over our list, all right? Number 1, the things we don't talk about, politics. We know that, right? As soon as you mention something, you get put in a box, and all of a sudden, it's out of the way. Number 2, religion, right? That's what we're here talking about today. Number 3, personal life. You ever heard the statement like, hey, you shouldn't bring your work home with you at the end of the day? Well, now we're being told you shouldn't bring your life with you to work at the beginning of it. And that makes it difficult for us to be able to share who we are. Number 4, frustrations at work. I've had more colleagues and people in workplaces tell me that when things are going wrong, they are less apt to tell somebody about it because of fear of reprisal. And the other thing is that they are scared that the foundation is not set for them to make those statements. Number 5, kids. All right, some of you are like, well, I don't want to talk about my own kids when I get home from work, much less talk about somebody else's kids when I'm at work, right? And that happens every now and then. Number 6, Waco. I know this is a heated topic. Is there anything good actually there? I know some of you are saying, I know, I heard it. He said surfing. This is John Burke. He said surfing. And some of you are saying the fixer-upper people. But I'm going to tell you, John, it took you 25 years to find a positive in Waco. So let's not jump on the travel advisory board just yet, all right, on that one. And number 7, UT moving to the SEC. If you thought losing, I know. You thought losing was bad. Here's my pose. If you thought losing was bad right now to Texas Tech, imagine when you have to face Alabama and Georgia on a regular basis, right? Yeah, well, except for yesterday, they had a backup quarterback. Let's just put it that way. So, all right. So early as a Christ follower, right, I was trying to figure out how do I portray my walk with Jesus? Like, how do I bring it forward? And I tried to surround myself with people and that were strong in faith and had been walking with him for a long time. And there was an older couple. They were like second parents to me. And I would spend time with him, go to dinner, and he would tell me about these stories, right? He worked in a grueling job in construction, mostly in the railroad industry, and he'd tell me about trying to share faith with all these construction workers, and most of them didn't want to have anything to do with it. But every time I saw him at dinner, he may have been tired, exhausted, and weary, but he always had a smile on his face. And I'd ask him, I was like, what is it? Why is it that you can stay so upbeat? And he said this, and let me quote this to you. He said, simple. Every day, there is an opportunity for God to grow his kingdom through me. Every encounter is to create the ability for you or them to grow. I used to think that I needed to show everyone how big my God is to them, but instead, God shows how big he is through me. And he pointed me to chapters in Genesis, and he said that, our life and our work life was meant to be hard. It was not going to be easy, and we had to farm the land and understand the people that we work with to help them make prosper. And he told me that our responsibilities go beyond Sunday mornings. And I have been guilty of too many learned moments on days like today that I didn't carry over 24 hours later when I went to work. I mean, have you ever been there where you sat here and you listened to a message from John or Carlos or Eric or Ross and thought to yourself, man, this is really good. I'm going to take this forward. And then you get to the office and that first work task starts and it all goes away. See, whatever your role is, work was never meant to be easy. Some of us actually spend more time at the office than we do at a home with our families. And so we have to start figuring out what are going to be our KPIs. And those of you in business, you understand that. Those are key performance indicators. What is our key performance indicators for God's work to be taking place where we're at? And I'm going to ask you something, because this is a topic that was started 5 weeks ago in our Flourishing series. How often do you review whether you are bearing fruit in the workplace? Or are you there for the paycheck? Let's go back to Genesis for a second since I mentioned it. And I'm going to preface the first part of this. If you guys have ever read the version of the Bible called The Message, right, where it's kind of laid back, right? Think about this first part as like Aman, the message, right? And so this is how I picture God and Adam being, all right? So God and Adam are in the garden, all right? And God's like, all right, Adam, let me walk you around. Let me show you what's going on here, all right? Let me walk you through the Garden of Eden handbook. It's pretty straightforward, all right? Rule number 1, here's the garden. Tend it, take care of it, love it, just enjoy yourself. Don't worry about clothes. Adam's like, what are clothes? He's like, don't worry about that either, all right? And then he's like, number 2, that tree, don't eat from it. Just trust me when I tell you this. If you eat from it, you'll die. And he's like, rule number 3, I've been creating a lot of creatures, right? So I need your help naming them. So if you wouldn't mind, I started with aardvark and platypus, the rest are on you, all right? And then he was like, okay, then God realizes like man shouldn't be alone. So Adam takes a nap, God does a little rib work, right? And then woman is made flesh. Now woman encounters one of these creatures, which is a serpent. And the serpent's like, hey God, God's not telling you the truth. You can eat the fruit from the tree and you won't die. In fact, you'll gain all the knowledge that God has. And so she eats from it, hands it over to Adam. He takes a bite, and that's when everything changes. Now, besides their work from garden privileges being revoked, sin enters the world. And with it, a division of labor that's different for both of them. And let's read. In Genesis 3:16, he starts, to the woman he said, I will make your pains in childbearing very severe. With painful labor you will give birth. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. To Adam he said, because you listened to your wife and ate fruit from the tree about which I commanded you, you must not eat from it. Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil you will eat food from it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your brow you will eat your food until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken. For dust you are, and to dust you will return. Now that is a tough performance review. All right? At that point, I'd be like, so God, you're telling me I don't get to keep this job, right? And he's like, God's like, no, you're going to the basement, kind of thing. But can I just say this, right? Even in the midst of all these hardships, God was still merciful, because God knew that if man had to endure childbirth, we would either be extinct or on the endangered list. Am I not right on this one, right? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, yes. I knew you guys would be vocal on that one. See, our lives, especially our work lives, were meant to be a test of grit, right? We were metaphorically given land that we had to figure out its purpose and how to make prosper. But the same principles apply for us in the workplace. For us to succeed, we have to start thinking like farmers. Have you been there? Do you have trouble understanding the demands of your employers, your employees? Do you not understand maybe what a TPS report is or where somebody put that red swing line stapler? Yeah, I love you. You office space folks know, right? What does your boss really want from you? Why can't your coworkers give the same effort you're giving? Why do you feel like you're taking all the responsibilities for the entire team? Why didn't you get that promotion over them because you deserved it better? Maybe we are asking the wrong question. Maybe the question is, what have I done to create the right environment for my growth and for those that are in my workplace? As John mentioned, I've worked a wide variety of roles. I've worked both as a hands-on physical therapist, and now I worked in health tech, and now I work in the fintech industry. And over the years, I have aided in the advancement of coworkers, but I've also neglected people that I knew that were struggling in the workplace and that could use my shoulder or my prayers. I've been generous, but I've also been selfish with my time and my walk. And God doesn't want that for me, nor does he want it for you. Early in my work years, I was so focused on job-related, paycheck-related activities and focused my energy not on cultivating, but on consuming. And you think, what actually changed for me? And it was one of the simplest comments that somebody said outside of work. It said, you are a lot different outside of the office than you are in it. Any of you ever heard that? Anybody said that to you? Or you thought that about somebody else when you're away from the workplace? Those are important words. See, most of my life, I have struggled with religion. I came to faith from moving from Islam to Christianity and worked to change who I was as a person within the world, but none of that showed up at work. None of the goodness that Jesus had brought to my life was apparent in my thoughts and actions. You see, I did not create the right environment for my colleagues to see the Spirit of God through me. And I got to tell you, if God and his character are not visible in your daily lives, and that includes work, your impact is minimized. We cannot leave God at the reception desk only to pick him up at the end of the workday. You have to let God work through you and in you at all times. And if we're going to get back to thinking about how to do this and show God's character through us, we need to start thinking like farmers and not consumers. So I'm going to walk you through 5 ways that I try to remember how to do this. And I made an abbreviation for it, which goes by SNAKE. All right? Get it? So a little bit of going back to the garden. And so it reminds me of kind of the stumble that we have, but also that there's benefits that come out of it. So let's go through it. All right. Number 1, sprout. Don't shout at the plants. All right? Don't shout at the crops. It will not help them grow. All right? James 1:19 states, my dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Now, I honestly don't know people who shout at crops, but I do know people who have houseplants and talk to them. Do any of you talk to your houseplants? All right, I see some heads. I see some side eyes going on like that person right there. It's okay. Let me give you a nugget, all right? There was actually a study done called the sound perception of plants. In it, they looked at frequencies, all right? And they found that certain frequencies that fall in conversational language actually can help to promote the growth of plants. And those that are outside of those frequencies actually can inhibit the growth of plants. So if the people that are side-eyeing you right now, right, come to you and say, why are you talking to your plants? You just look at them and you yell, science, and you walk away. That'll take care of the problem. I'm just telling you that right now. Just do that and it'll happen. Now that could cause some other issues, but just try it. But have you ever shown frustration to a colleague or a coworker? Anger, maybe shouting, passive aggressiveness? Do you involve yourself with office politics or gossip? You see, those types of things actually inhibit the growth of those around you, but it also inhibits your growth too. Instead, we should be sprouting people. There are opportunities all the time where we see people that are struggling. They actually may be new to faith or new to their workplace, and this is an opportunity for you to build into them, to help them grow and prosper. It may mean to become a mentor to some of these people. It may mean that if you're new, that you seek out mentorship. I have seen people grow more in organizations where people were served by those that were unintended or unexpected. Philippians 2:3-4 states, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others." Number 2, nurture. Don't neglect your crops. Farmers don't go and plant things in the ground and say, "I'll see you at harvest time." What we have to do is we have to take a look at the ground and look out for pests and weeds and other things that may be curbing their growth. And we have to do the same things in our workplace. I'll tell you, there are a lot of us that we go to work tomorrow or have a lot of job responsibilities. We have our checklists. We have the things that we need to get accomplished. But we also know when people are not meeting their ends of the bargain too. We see people struggling. And what happens is when you neglect those around you, those crops, those people can also fail. Don't neglect the relationships that God has brought into your lives. In Matthew 22:36-40, it states, "Teacher, what is the greatest commandment?" Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these 2 commandments." Can I tell you that so many people I talk to don't realize that neighbors includes your boss, your coworker, your colleague, the person that you're frustrated with. And what we have to do is we have to show them the love that God shows us. Do you take the time to have lunch with a coworker? Do you learn the names of the people that you work with? I mean, their full names, and maybe the names of their spouses. There's so many people I ask in my own workplace, I'm like, "Do you know the last name of somebody?" And they don't. And so when we only pursue people halfway, they can begin to fail too. Now, some of us are saying, "Well, I work in a remote workforce. It's difficult for me to have lunch or whatever," but there are a growing number of people who actually do virtual meetups, virtual coffees, virtual lunches. The ability to nurture people can go beyond just in person. Let me give you a stat on a study that was done. This study was done in July of this year by a group called JobSage, and it showed some very interesting and mind-opening stats. The first one is 1 in 5 Americans state they don't have a friend at work. It's 20%. Think about that number. How many people just come to work and just go home? 84% of Americans working remotely have a harder time making friends. 95% of Americans state that having a friend makes them happier. 76% indicated work friends make them more creative, and 74% said it makes them more productive. My friends, nurturing those around you by connection and action can make a lasting impact in and out of work. So I ask you, how often are you diving into the lives of your colleagues? Number 3, admonish, don't accuse. I know this is a weird phrase, but I'll walk you through it. Right? It's easy when we go to the workplace and things aren't done to blame others. A report's not done on time. A team member's not pulling their weight. Someone you may let struggle so it increases your advancement for promotion. See, farmers try to figure out ways of making the land more prosperous. Sometimes they put holes in the land called aeration, and what they do is you think it's just a hole in the ground, but what it is it's tough ground that they're trying to churn up and make a better foundation for it. And it allows for air and nutrients and water to penetrate deeper. And sometimes we need to do the same. Most of us are aware of what goes on in our workplaces when we see people struggle and tasks are not being done. But we say it's not our problem because I have my own things to work on. If you see someone struggling, come alongside them, even if it's not in your job description, even if it's not on your workload. See, what God wants for us is to push our colleagues. And sometimes we may find that we need to be tough with them. And that may mean to admonish them. In 2 Thessalonians 3:15 it states, "Yet do not regard him as an enemy, but admonish him like a brother." And in today's society, we think of the word admonish a little bit differently. We think about it as reprimand or rebuking somebody. But actually, out of this scripture, when they say admonish, it's like, I'm helping you, I'm instructing you, I'm guiding you to the right, solution to this problem. Love of our colleagues, especially as done through Christ, may include calling them out, pushing them to be the best, and giving our time to help them succeed, because each one of those people are a masterpiece in God's eyes. So how do we unveil that? So I ask you, are you willing to help your colleagues experience growth? Number 4, calm versus chaos. All right, I know the spelling's wrong. I needed to fit it into my abbreviation, all right? So y'all need to go along with this. Just ignore it, right? If you have spelling issues or any complaints, you can email me directly at carlosortiz@gatewaychurch.com, all right? So, look, I worked in so many workplaces where things are like, they're proper processes and procedures, right? You know, you go along, you figure it out, and everything's going. And a lot of places I work with, and I work in a place right now where it feels like I'm trying to fly the ship as we're building it. I mean, things are always out of whack, and we're trying to figure out the right processes and procedures. And early on in my work years, what I did was, anytime those little hitches happened, I let it derail me. Sometimes it was for the day, sometimes it was for the week, other times it was for long periods of time where I'd hold a grudge. Do you ever have that happen to you? Somebody gives you an assignment and says, I need this done today. It is due, and I need your help in doing it. And you get frustrated or angry or don't even put your full effort into it because you're like, I have my own task to do. A lot of this happens to us on a regular basis because what we let happen is we let frustration create a rift between our colleagues. Have you ever been there? Have you ever tried to create calm in your work storms and had difficulty doing it? I know I have, and I've spent a lot of my life trying to get away from those frustrations. And what was simple was, a few years ago, what's funny is I brought this Bible. I'm going rogue here all of a sudden. And in it, there's a thing. Here, I'm going to show you something. This is actually pretty neat. This is a Gateway morning manual, whatever we're going to call this, right? And the date on here is, let me tell you the date, June 2nd, 2002. I saw this morning while I was waiting. And in it was talking to me about a lesson we were doing about keeping calm within chaos. And I didn't know where that seed was planted, but I guess it was planted in 2002. But here are the 4 things that I do that help me to create calm within the chaos in the workday. First things first, invite God in. Every day I try to start in the morning saying, God, it's your day. Whatever you want to see happen, happen. And I'm along for the ride. Number 2, what do I expect? Every one of us creates checklists or have responsibilities, or we have an action plan that we do. I'm a manual checklist writer. I have 10, 15 things I need to get done, and I want to try to get them all done, right? Some of us are like that. But the third thing is what helped me. In that list, I keep one blank spot, and that's called the unexpected. And what happened was, when I created room for the unexpected, it allowed me to say, God, things are going to happen on this day. And it may not. But what that allowed me to do was give it over to God and say, you're in control. Let me keep calmness to this. Now, can I tell you this? It doesn't always work, all right? Because there are times where I let it derail me, but when I go back to it at the end of the day with number 4, the ending prayer of gratitude. He gives us our work lives. He gives us our family lives. And to me, everything is a great gift of God. And some of you are like, hey, look, I may be out of work. I may be having difficulties. I may be in a toxic workplace, and I get it. I've been there, right? But constantly working through the thoughts and actions of this list created a calmness in me that still rings today. Now, things do happen for all of us, but consistency is key. So I'm going to ask you, will you let God lead you through your workday? And number 5, envision. Envision what can happen when you partner with God. I can tell you a story. In 1994, there were a couple, the Salgados. They'd returned back to their ancestral home in Brazil. And Mr. Salgado, actually, his ancestral home was in the middle of the rainforest. And he had spent years away with his wife as a kind of an award-winning photojournalist, documenting things in Southeast Asia and Africa. But when they came back, what they found was a land that was barren. Barren of any life, barren of any water, barren of any trees that actually existed there. And they didn't know what to do. They thought to themselves, how can we make this change? And his wife had a crazy idea. She said, let's replant the rainforest. And we're talking about tens and thousands of acres. And so they did the math. They brought in experts. They brought in volunteers over a 4 to 5 year period. and they decided we're going to plant the first seeds in the ground. And in 1999, they started planting those seeds, and they started envisioning what could happen if we bring life back to these thorns and thistles. And over the next 20 years, the success of what they did was immeasurable. What they thought would happen was things would go around them, right? Around their home and bring life back. But instead, it spread like wildfire to thousands upon thousands of acres in their area. Let me share you some stats, which are unbelievable. Over 20 years, over 290 species of trees were planted. The 8 natural springs that had disappeared, when they came back, all returned. And even in drought times today, they still flow. 172 bird species returned, of which 6 were in danger of becoming extinct. 33 species of mammals returned, with 2 of them vulnerable and about to be extinct. 293 species of plants, 15 species of reptiles, and 15 species of amphibians returned. What the Salgados did was bring life back to a barren land. What if you followed that example? Every day, a lot of us go to a workplace that is devoid of God's presence. It's barren of his love and his character. What if you provided support to a colleague that is unexpected? What if you gave up your lunch at your desk or at home and asked someone to meet you out and hear their story? What if you helped a coworker with a project that pushed their promotion over yours? If each person at this campus or any of the campuses today that are watching or online committed to building into one person at their workplace, envision the possibilities of what could happen for God's kingdom. Think about the lives that could be changed if we just make that simple action. But to do that, the first step is forming a closer relationship with Jesus. Some of you are here, and this may be your first time, and I want to say welcome. It is so good to have you here. This is a great place where you can just come as you are, but also to just ask the hard questions and go at your own pace. Some of you have been here a while. Now, I've been here almost 23 years, and I was prompted by that message 5 weeks ago by Carlos where he asked, what kind of fruit are you bearing? What kind of fruit are you bearing in your workplace right now? Our responses should be more reflex than reactions. The more you allow yourself to experience his nature, the closer you become to him, but the closer you are to being able to affect those around you. Look, in partnership with Jesus through you, your workplace, which at this point could be dry and barren, could flower and bloom. Ways to do that. You're thinking, I don't know how to get there. Starts simply. Spend quiet time with God. Dive into the scriptures. Pray for those around you, even if you don't tell them you're praying for them in their workplace. Be involved in their lives. Ask them. Hear their story. Serve others with others. And Gateway has an amazing amount of opportunities where you can serve and you can be comfortable with serving with others. And we'll find that when you do that, it becomes a natural extension of serving those in your workplace. We spend an inordinate amount of time creating reports and forecasts and budgets. When are we going to allow God to be budget into those opportunities? And let me tell you this, when are we going to take the steps of not allowing Sunday morning messages be lost whenever that first email message pops into our inbox? Will you pray with me? Oh, dear God, you're so awesome. We just love everything that you do for us. Everything is a great gift that you provide for us. Lord, there's a song that I'm reminded of. It's your love is like springtime, right? Come tend the soil of my soul, and like a garden I will grow. Lord, I pray that we take what we learn here week after week and we start tilling that soil in our workplaces. We're able to find the right foundation and right growth medium, and then what we do is we plant the right seeds of your character so that we see it bloom and prosper throughout. Lord, I pray for each and every one of us that you give us the name of the person that we should reach out to this week, to connect with them, to learn about them, to walk alongside them, and to show them your love and your grace, and pray with them when needed. We give this all up to you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you.